Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. I just want to start off with saying a massive thank you to Mark Telfer. Thanks so much, Mark, for that super chat. At this stage, if Boris called himself a liar, I wouldn't believe him. And we also have a super chat from Niall Q, £5. Thanks so much, Niall. How's it going? It's going very well. So I just want to say something about Mark's super chat. Yeah, if Boris Johnson did call himself a liar, like, maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he's not telling he's confusing us. What I said on a number of occasions, but I don't know if I said it on some of the streams, but I may have said it in one or two of the videos. What somebody should do during Prime Minister's questions is stand up and say, Boris Johnson tells the truth. Then sit down and then stand up again and ask the Speaker of the House, I'm sorry, can I correct the record because I misled Parliament by saying that Boris Johnson tells the truth? I don't know if people would understand it though, because you can't say he's a liar. So if you say that he tells the truth and it's false, then you're supposed to correct the record. So you could try that as a tactic. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Niall. Nico, thanks so much for that super chat. Boris who? Exactly. Unfortunately for the I don't like calling him Boris. I prefer to call him Johnson because that's his name, Boris Johnson. Boris makes it too informal. It's too friendly, and unfortunately I couldn't fit Johnson into the title on the thumbnail, so I had to use Boris instead. Apologies for that. Thanks, Nico. Valerio, thanks so much for that super chat as well. Hi, Max. Let's have a party with Boris soon. No, a work event. So, before we begin as well, I just want to say hello to who's on the stream. We have James, great to see you. Stop in the name of love before you break my heart. Mo Green replied. Thanks great to see both of you. We have Killer, great to have you on, Killer. Thanks for moderating. We have Nico, thanks again for the super chat. We have Boomerage, great to see you. We have Lenan, great to see you. Gene T, great to have you on. Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you too. Enzo the God, great to have you on. We have Nullflinger, great to see you. Tiny Demolition Lover, hope you're well. Great to see you on, hope you're fine tonight. We have WNG Fan and Tachi Martha, great to see you. You and me, great to see you. Mrs. Dahl, great to have you on. Audrey, great to see you, hope you're well tonight. Love the comments on the channel. Pete Robbins, great to see you. Chatty Rat, great to have you on. Ed Stacy, great to see you once again. Ed, Colin, great to see you. CGM, great to see you. Katrina, great to have you on. Katrina Bryce, I hope you're well. Jacob, great to see you too. John O'Sullivan, great to have you on. Inconsequential, great to see you too. And so many more. I can't say hello to everyone. Whoa, we're up to 306 viewers. So remember, guys, to smash that button. Smash that like button. Lars, thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. No comment, but thanks so much for that. So Boris Johnson is in Ukraine at the moment. Hopefully not attending any parties. Or if there are any parties, well, let's hope he's behaving himself. So I want to start off by the Freckle Pony. Thanks so much for that super chat. If Johnson called himself a liar, time would stop. There was a funny meme. What was it? I think it was. Oh, there was a BBC journalist. I don't remember who it was. It was Andrew Marr. Andrew Marr was asking Boris Johnson, what's your favourite lie? And Boris Johnson replies, I don't tell any lies. And Andrew Marr's response was, yeah, that's my favourite too. So I just want to read this article here. It says, 8 ways Sue Gray's Partygate report makes things worse for Boris Johnson. So the first one it says here is photographs. More than 300 photographs have been handed to the police as part of their investigation into Partygate allegations, Scotland Yard said in a statement. So what happened was Sue Gray released the updates to her report. Boris Johnson responded to them. It's not the full report, of course. It seems we're not going to see the full report until after the investigation by the police, the Metropolitan Police, the ones who said that there was no evidence before to even begin an investigation. They've received 300 photographs. 300. I'm sure many of them contain Boris Johnson. The images were found by Miss Gray, a senior civil servant, and her team as they interviewed more than 70 people as part of their inquiries. There is Alexis, thanks so much for that super chat. Ciao Max, ciao Alexis, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Thanks for that super chat, very kind of you. Indie Truck Davy is in the house, so remember to check out Indie Truck Davy's channel. The mods will post a link. Dr. Johan, thanks so much for that super chat. Cool, you're cool. You're the cool dude. Thanks so much for that. Wee Scott's dog is on, I see. Great to have you on, Wee Scott's dog. Hope you're well tonight. Mega Hairy Bum. I love these names. I don't know if there'll be any celebrities on tonight. We'll see if there's some. Because we had Sue Gray pop in last Friday, so that was interesting. Anyway, sticking with Sue Gray, the production of one photograph, Mr. Johnson in the garden with cheese and wine, obtained by The Guardian, prompted a media storm, and that event did not reach the bar for the police investigation. Wow. So, if this didn't require an investigation, and the police are investigating, then what are we going to see? I can only imagine what's in the other photos, like Boris Johnson dancing on a table or something like that, pouring bottles of champagne over his face or something. I don't know. Then number 2 is the flat. So a gathering in Mr. Johnson's Downing Street flat is being investigated by police for potential COVID rule breaches. Miss Gray report revealed the event on the 13th of November 2020, when Dominic Cummings, then a former senior advisor, was forced out of number 10. The political danger from the allegation goes much beyond the claim of parties held by the advisors, with which the Prime Minister did not attend. This is an event in his own home. So one thing is, it was a work event, but if it's an event in his home, that's serious. Now, what could be very serious for Boris Johnson, what could actually bring him down, is if the police issue a fine. If they say you have to pay a fine or you have broken the law, if he has to pay a fine, then he's broken the law. And I don't see how Boris Johnson can remain in his position if he's broken the law. Not because he would feel terrible about that, or that the Conservative Party would feel terrible about that. It's that you would have a sitting Prime Minister who has broken the law. I don't know if there's a case, if that has happened before. And you can imagine how, in the House of Commons, you would be able to call Boris Johnson a criminal because he has broken the law. You'd be able to point the finger, and the Speaker of the House couldn't do anything about that because you wouldn't be insinuating something. It would be a fact. It's different than calling Boris Johnson a liar, but you would actually have the proof that he has broken the law. So I think it'd be extremely difficult for him to remain, and this would create a distraction, and it would create problems for many members of the Conservative Party, because they keep saying at the moment he hasn't done anything wrong, he has apologized, but if you break the law, I don't see how he can stay. Darren, thanks so much for that super chat. What do you think is next for Herr Fefe? Once he's finally booted out, what do you think is next? Probably a book. Or he might go back to writing articles for The Telegraph. Or he may be God forbid, invited on GB News or something. I don't think we're going to hear the end of Boris Johnson. I think if he is kicked out, he'll have two options. He'll remain as an MP. If he's kicked out as an MP as well, then he'll go back into journalism. I think he'll start writing for the Telegraph or something like that. But he likes the attention, so I think it's difficult for someone like Boris Johnson just to go away and be quiet. And I don't see him remaining as a backbencher. That's not something he ever wanted to be. He wanted to be Prime Minister. And that taken from him will really hit him hard. So I think the natural step forward for him is into the media. He wants the attention. And that's the best way for him to get his attention, to seek attention. Thanks for that super chat, Darren. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any other ones. Sorry. Okay. The Mail on Sunday claimed that ABBA songs, including "The Winner Takes It All," were played. Downing Street and Mr. Johnson have both categorically denied a party took place, which means that a party took place. Other Boris events. In total, Miss Gray revealed that 12 of the 16 events she's looked into are being investigated by Scotland Yard, spread across 8 different dates. Leaving to one side the Downing Street flag gathering, Mr. Johnson reportedly attended at least 3 other events being looked at by police. They are the Bring Your Own Booze Downing Street Garden event in May 2020, his alleged birthday party in June 2020, and a farewell event for an advisor in November 2020. Scotland Yard's interest in the events was only confirmed on Tuesday. Lars, thanks for that super chat. The Tory party won with a wet t-shirt contest. That's probably one thing he's probably attended one of those as well. I really hope that Anne Whittingham wasn't there. Another Gray report. What's this? A few weeks ago, Number 10 hoped that Miss Gray's report would draw a line under the Partygate saga, getting the facts in the open before Johnson rested. Reset moved on to the agenda. That had not happened. In fact, due to the Metropolitan Police's request that only minimal reference was be made to the events it is investigating, Miss Gray gave only a short update. Late on Tuesday, after a barrage of requests for a promise that Miss Gray's full findings would be made public, Mr. Johnson promised her final update would be released. That means another Gray report is coming, most likely after the police probe is complete, which may well reveal details of what happened at the current events, investigated. When will we see this report? It could be a week from now, it could be months from now. Police investigations normally take a long time, so it's likely that we may not see this report this side of May. It could, depending on what they're investigating, depending on how much detail they're going through. 300 photographs handed in is a lot of evidence to look through, to connect people with it, maybe to interview some of these people. That takes time, so it could be a couple of months before we actually see the results of this. And my fear is that when these things drag on for a long time, the public move on. The public will forget about this, and by the time Sue Gray's report eventually comes out, people will be like, okay, or it will be released, on page, the news about it would be on page 27 of the Telegraph or something like that, which is not what we want to see. But if the police are doing a proper investigation, then that will take time. Number 5, Met clears the way. So Scotland Yard's insistence on details of 12 gatherings it is investigating are kept secret was a key block on information being put on in on Sue Gray's report, but it will not last. So yeah, this block will not last. A statement released on Tuesday afternoon by the Met said this request only applies during the duration of our investigation. In other words, Sue Gray is free to publish everything that she found when the police investigation, which could last weeks rather than months, is completed. So they believe it will last weeks. I think it would be more than that, but I'm not privy to this information. The position, if it holds, means Miss Gray and the Met will both be happy eventually to release everything they know, piling pressure on Number 10 to agree to do the same. The new events, so there are some new events. 3 of the dozen events which Miss Gray revealed were being investigated by Scotland Yard have not been fully reported in the public domain before Tuesday. They were all leaving events. One in the Cabinet Office in June 18, 2020, another in Downing Street on December 17th, 2020, and a third in Number 10 on January 14, 2021. The full details of what took place at each event is unclear, but it means that more details about gatherings that have sparked police interest are sure to come out. Then we have the positions Johnson can take. So during the bruising appearance in the House of Commons on Monday, Mr. Johnson laid out a string of new public positions that are likely to be scrutinised in the coming weeks. The Prime Minister declined to promise that he would resign if fined by the police for breaking COVID-19 laws, sidestepping a demand some Tory MPs privately have made. So he hasn't said whether he will resign if he is fined. I think it's going to be very difficult for him not to resign. Mr. Johnson, speaking at the dispatch box, also doubled down on his insistence that the party did not take place in Number 10 flat on the 13th of November 2020. He knows a party took place. He knows that Sue Gray knows a party took place, and the police know that a party took place. Why is he doing this? I think it's about buying time. He's hoping that, by saying no, he'll have some support in the public domain, and he'll keep a number of MPs on side. And then when the information comes out that yes, there was a party, then he can switch and start talking about something else, or just apologize for it. So saying this is his. You can apply this to pretty much everything regarding Boris Johnson. First you say no, and then you're discovered and you say sorry. So deny until it's discovered, and then when it's discovered and released, then you apologize. Of course, he's not really apologizing. He's just saying it in order to cover his arse. And then finally, new Tory dissenters. Tuesday brought new Tory rebels. Andrew Mitchell, former Chief Whip, declared in the Commons that Mr. Johnson has lost his support. Theresa May, of course, not a huge supporter of Boris Johnson. The former Prime Minister herself, ousted by Tory rebels who favoured Mr. Johnson, asked her successor if he had not understood the COVID-19 rules. Then Angela Richardson quit as a ministerial aide to Michael Gove, the Community Secretary, making her the first government resignation over Partygate. The 54 letters mark which triggers a no confidence vote in Johnson have not yet been met. Yeah, so there aren't enough letters yet. But new Tories going over the top with criticism will increase the jitters in Number 10. Chris, thanks so much for that super chat. Yay! Level up. I love that. Thanks so much for that. Wow, thank you so much for that kind super chat. I think what the problem is, we're waiting for members of the party to grow a backbone. And what'll happen is they're waiting. I think members of the backbench, some of them will come out and criticize Johnson because they're in a safe seat, or they're in a safe position, or they're in a position in the party that they know that they're not going to be punished. But really, we have to wait for someone on the front bench or a significant number of backbenchers to come out against the Prime Minister. And I think yesterday saw horrible, truly horrible display, but it didn't really tarnish Johnson in the eyes of the Conservative Party. So in the eyes of the public, yes, but in the eyes of the party, he's still pretty safe. But if this is something that's postponed, so that new information about the parties is postponed for a long period of time, I think it's going to help Johnson. But if this every week we're hearing something, this drip, 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 I think this is extremely damaging because it redirects the conversation back to him breaking the rules. And I don't think there is a risk of fatigue setting in where people just get tired of it. But that would be if it's every day or a few times a week. But if it's once a week, maybe that's enough to eventually convince enough MPs to go, okay, we can't continue with this. But I think we have to watch the polls. The polls are important. Let me just bring up one of the polls here. We can see here Westminster voting intentions, 11-point lead for Labour. So Conservatives 33, Labour 44, Lib Dems 9, Greens 3, SNP 4, others 8 unchanged. And you can see how the Labour Party are making significant gains here. So if there was a general election held tomorrow, the Labour Party would, I don't know whether they'd win an outright majority or will they definitely be in a very strong position, probably form a coalition, maybe with the Lib Dems and the Greens, or just the Lib Dems, and that would be enough for them to form a government. And the Conservatives would be trashed. Some people are talking about a replay of 1997. I don't know if that's a realistic scenario, but we will see. Okay, let's move on. So it says here, this was just released before I came on to this. I set up the stream. It says here, number 10 U-turns on refusal to say if it would reveal if Johnson is fined over COVID. This thing is getting more and more complicated. So Downing Street has U-turned on its refusal to confirm whether it would reveal if Boris Johnson had been fined for breaching the rules, acknowledging that there would be significant public interest in the issue. So originally, Downing Street were not going to tell the public if Boris Johnson had been fined for breaking the rules. Because if he had been fined, then he broke the rules. It's not just a case of, well, he thought it was a work event or he told people to go back inside. They were going to actually withhold this information. And of course, even members of the party would say, no, we can't do this. You can't withhold this information. David McGuinness, thanks so much, Davey. Thanks so much for that super chat. The right-wing press here in the UK will move the public on from Partygate starting from tomorrow. And that's what I'm afraid of. That people will be convinced, okay, there's the Northern Ireland Protocol or Brexit or immigrants or something like that, and that's unfortunate, because this is a real issue. This is not, look, it's not about parties, it's not about cake, and the right-wing media are trying to convince people it's about parties and about cake, and Boris Johnson maybe broke some rules, but everyone broke the rules. That's not the case. It's not about that. It's about lying in Parliament, misleading the House. It's about someone who writes the rules breaking the rules. And it's the human aspect, because people were not able to attend funerals, for example. People were not able to be close to loved ones at the end of their lives. Many people were not able to spend time with friends and family. There's a huge psychological aspect of this as well. A massive amount of damage done to people's mental health during these lockdowns. I'm not saying that the lockdowns were necessary. The rules were necessary. They saved lives. But I'm not going to say they didn't have an impact. Of course they did. What you wanted was the people writing the rules set in an example. And I've talked about this before during the pandemic as well, during that period in 2020 and 2021. I said, how many times do you see Boris Johnson without a mask on? You know, even the front bench on Monday, and Liz Truss tested positive, and she was sitting on the front bench without a mask on, sitting next to Priti Patel. The only people I saw with a mask on the front bench were Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid. The rest were without a mask. Jacob Rees-Mogg didn't have a mask. Dominic Raab didn't have a mask. Or I didn't see them wearing a mask. So, you know, this is a guy, Boris Johnson, never took these rules seriously. He didn't believe the rules applied to him. He went out and told people, make sure to maintain social distancing, make sure to wash your hands, make sure to do this, make sure to do that. And at the end of the day, he didn't do it himself. And David is right that what they're going to do is, as soon as it gets uncomfortable, truly uncomfortable, they'll move on to something else. They'll redirect the conversation onto something else. It goes on to say, thanks so much again, David, for that. Whoops, just a moment. Nevertheless, it remains unclear if Number 10 would comment on whether any staff were fined for lockdown breaking parties in Number 10, because the fact that fixed penalty notices are issued to individuals and it is officially up to them to disclose them. And this is a problem because Boris Johnson, okay, we'll probably find out about him. But how many other individuals, if Boris Johnson was at a party and Boris Johnson broke the rules, then everyone who was at that party broke the rules, and each of those individuals would have received a fixed penalty. If they received one of these fines, it should be made public. Yes, they are individuals, but they were at an event that is, how can I say, part of government, official government work. Well, sorry, that's a work event. Which is it? They were attending parties or they were attending work events that broke the rules. I at this stage, I don't know which way to go. Earlier, Labour and the Liberal Democrats argued that the public would have the right to know if Johnson had been fined after a Metropolitan Police investigation, after Number 10 refused to say this would definitely happen. The Met later confirmed that it did not routinely release or confirm names of people who had been given fixed penalty notices, and that this would be the case with any imposed for Number 10 parties. And I understand that. They have to protect people's privacy. People's privacy has to be protected, and it's not the business of the police releasing this information. They issue a fine, fixed penalty notice, and that's it. Individuals can come forward and say, yes, I received one. I think it would be the right thing if members of Number 10 did that. You know, it's for the common good. You've received your fine, you're not going to get punished anymore. But maybe some of them don't want to do it because they believe it would undermine their position at work. I don't know if this would affect their work. And we also have to remember that many of these members of staff were there before Boris Johnson, and they will be there after Boris Johnson. And there's no point them falling on their sword for the Prime Minister, because he's not going to do it for them. Anyway, let's move on. So I wanted to show you this clip. This is very funny. I think she's going to win an Oscar for this. So this is the former Scottish Conservative leader, Ruth Davidson. She was in tears as she explains how she feels let down by Boris Johnson's leadership. Now, she used to be the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, and she is now a member of the House of Lords. She was put in the House of Lords by drum roll, Boris Johnson. Gareth McDonald, thanks so much for that super chat. Sorry I'm late for the work event. I was waiting for Sue Gray to tell me whether I could attend. Didn't manage to bring any booze. Ah, damn it, Gareth. I'm afraid. I shared what I had with the police out front. And of course, you were not picked up on CCTV because... Whoops, I dropped something. Not picked up on CCTV because, that's not evidence for the police. Thanks so much for that, Gareth. So let's see what she had to say.
I am upset, and I'm upset because, not just because of things that myself and others that are in my close family and circle of friends missed and had to give up, but, I was working in the Scottish Parliament. I had constituents that lost businesses. I had people that feel guilty that they didn't go to the care home to see their parents, that they didn't hug a friend at a funeral because they played by the rules. And now they look at what happened in number 10 and they feel like idiots, and they shouldn't be made to feel like that.
Baroness Ruth Davidson, thanks very much.
Do you believe her? I don't know if I believe her. She's someone who has agreed with Boris Johnson on many things, and she comes out now and says, yes, I feel terrible about it. I'm a bit concerned about people who, now that they think it's politically expedient to say these things, actually say it. Now, of course, she's not representing anyone at the moment apart from herself. But it plays good in the public eye if she's doing this. She's not going to defend Johnson. There's no benefit in doing that. It's actually a cost. It would make her look bad. And I think what's interesting is what's happening in Scotland with the Conservatives. They want Boris Johnson out. He's a cost for them. He's a liability. They would prefer, I don't know, Rishi Sunak maybe, or Dominic Raab, or Liz Truss, maybe even Liz Truss. They would prefer somebody apart from anyone but Boris Johnson. Because as I said before, when Boris Johnson comes to Scotland, he's smuggled in under the cover of darkness and smuggled out. He normally arrives in Air Force bases because it's the safest place to land, maybe. Definitely don't arrive by train. By car, no way, don't do that, Boris. It's too risky. You definitely you don't see him do any walkabouts in the centre of Glasgow or in Edinburgh, because he's so hated there, and he's toxic for Conservatives. They would, he whenever he does arrive, he visits some business that's maybe run by a Conservative donor, I don't know, or at least somebody who votes for the Conservative Party, normally in the border areas. So the Conservatives have most of their support on the border with England. And that's where Johnson goes normally and stays in a... what was it? He stayed in with his fiancée at the time. He stayed in a little flat. I don't know if it was owned by Zach Goldsmith, but he stayed there, and somebody had taken a picture of him, and then somebody had told him to get out of their field. Some farmer, I'm not remembering it very well, but it was a funny situation. And then he left. But the location was hidden for security reasons, yes. Because of all the fans that would want to go there. All right. So I just want to, saying somewhat with Scotland, we have the essence. I'm not going to show you all of this. I just want to show you a little bit of this interview with Ian Blackford when he said that Boris Johnson should leave, should resign, because he lied to Parliament. He broke the rules.
Because we now know that the Prime Minister has misled the House of Commons. We know he's lied repeatedly. We're in a situation where the Metropolitan Police are looking at events over multi-periods, multi-parties, perhaps as many as 4 that the Prime Minister had been at. People are outraged by a Prime Minister that simply won't accept responsibility. There has to be dignity in public life. I followed the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May, yesterday, and I had many disagreements with Theresa, but I respected her for her integrity, her honesty, and the recognition of the office that she held. This is a Prime Minister that's demeaned the office, and he should have been gone by now.
Well, you must hold the Metropolitan Police in the same high level as you do the former Prime Minister, so why not just let them get on with their work?
Because at the end of the day, we now have enough evidence. We know, we do insofar as the Sugray report, I mean, it's not as we would have liked. We want to see the full report. It's important that we get that. But the Sugray report points out there were failures of leadership, that events took place. There were events across 12 dates, as many as 16 parties that took place. The Prime Minister has admitted that being at these events, and the public rightly are outraged. So many people that sacrificed so much that simply can't accept that the Prime Minister had this culture of partying where they were not able to grieve for their dying relatives.
You know, it's normally what happens if there's like a police officer who's broken the law. They're put on suspended leave. I don't know if that's the right term. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. This is the fundamental problem. An MP has to serve his or her constituents and the party. The latter usually win. Usually always win, I think. It's always putting the party first, and that's why you're seeing so many MPs who are afraid to come out against Johnson, because their constituents say he has to go, but they have to say, well, yeah, but the party gave me the job. I'm not going to go independent. If I go independent, I'll actually have to work. I'll have to win you over. Some MPs will do that. Some MPs do a really good job in their constituency. They work hard. They're liked by their constituents, and in some cases some of them become run as an independent and maintain the majority that they had before because they're well liked in their constituency, more liked than the party. But most MPs for the Conservative Party, the majority of them are people there who are there, many of them, especially the 2019 class. These are people who came in on Boris Johnson's coattails. These are people who won because of Get Brexit Done. These people would never have won an election on their own. Won their seats on their own. So they need Johnson to remain, in a sense, and they need the party to fight the battles for them, because many of them are going to lose their seats at the next election. Because Johnson is no longer there, and because Brexit has been demonstrated to be a disaster. Thanks again, number 3. Oh, I think we have another one. Gareth, thanks so much again. Well, very kind of you again, Gareth. Small disclaimer, that thing Max dropped was totally not a CCTV of my arrival at the aforementioned work event being tossed into the nearest bin. No, not at all. It was actually my phone. It was on the desk here beside me, and I get very animated. You don't see me, but I wave my hands around a lot, especially when I get very upset about things. And I moved my hand too quickly and I knocked the phone on the floor. So it's still on the floor. I haven't reached down. I'll get it later. Get it after the stream. But like, for example, if a police officer broke the rules, they would be suspended, not fired, but they would be suspended until an investigation was carried out. Couldn't we have this for Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson is suspended from Parliament until the investigation is complete. And then if he's found to have not broken any rules or broken any laws, then he can return to Parliament and continue with his work. Dominic Raab would sit in for him.
Inadvertently at these parties, these events.
It just happened to have the fact that parties were taking place in the Downing Street flat. But, other things have come out over the course of the last few days, Kay. The fact that we know that security briefings, highly sensitive security briefings, have been left lying around the Downing Street flat, left lying around Chequers. The fact that people could come and go.
That's hearsay.
Well, it's actually, maybe it's hearsay, but really, do you think if you went to Boris Johnson's flat, he would have all the paperwork, all the necessary security documents in a safe? No, they'd be sitting on they'd probably have coffee stains on them. Wine stains because of glasses of red wine placed on top of these papers. I can imagine, the head of MI5 or MI6 meeting with Boris Johnson and says, Mr. Prime Minister, did you receive our communique or our our intelligence report on Ukraine. Is that? Oh yeah. Let me have a look. Excuse me. Ah, here it is. Damn it, we were using it as a. We were using it to hide Sue Gray's report, but we had a few bottles of red wine placed on top of it, so it didn't blow away. Look, Johnson. There's no way Johnson treats anything with respect apart from himself. He doesn't even treat himself with respect. Look at his hair. Scottish Independence 2023. Thank you so much for that super chat. Max, where's Michael Gove and his skullduggery? Has the union unit been doing? What skullduggery has the union unit been doing? This is something that's, yes, definitely something on the back burner we haven't heard much from recently. And common question that's asked about Michael Gove is, where the hell is he? Where is Michael Gove? I haven't seen Michael Gove for a long time. He pops up from time to time, but we haven't seen him recently, so I don't know where Michael Gove is. And of course, the union unit will kick in as soon as Nicola Sturgeon starts talking about another referendum. And I was quite disappointed with Jack Straw today when I'm not that familiar with Jack Straw since he left office, but he was talking about how the SNP are spending English money and how they just complain all the time. That was really disappointing to hear, because I actually thought of him. I don't have a huge amount of respect for Jack Straw, but I was expecting a bit more from him than that. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I want to take a little break, a comedy moment, and then we'll be back in a few minutes with some more serious business. I hope you enjoy this.
Prime Minister didn't do anything wrong, and see, if I'm honest, you're all wrong. Prime Minister's been brilliant.
Go on yourself, Nadine.
I just want to say that Prime Minister Boris a lot of people work in that building, so you're going to have to take that into consideration as well. And at the end of the day, Boris has been awfully busy. He's been trying to get Brexit done, and Brexit's been done. And that's been brilliant. Everybody knows that's so successful. So at the end of the day, everybody just going on and on about the Sue, what's her name, report. Just at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. Sue Gray is just another woman with an opinion, and she might be wrong. That's all I'm saying.
That was a bizarre interview where she kept moving around. You know, like, have you ever gone to a pub at night and if you smoke, you go outside for a smoke, or if you're out with somebody who is smoking, you go outside with them, and there's usually somebody there who knows everything about everything, and they tend to sway from side to side. But of course, if Nadine Dorries has some sort of medical condition, I take that all back, but I don't think she does. You know, Liz Truss tested positive for COVID. Nadine Dorries tested positive for cognac. Anyway, let's switch to Northern Ireland and Brexit for a moment. Brexit and Northern Ireland are very closely tied. I always find these stories hilarious. Northern Ireland Protocol, 1,000 sign Orange Order petition. Now, anyone I'm not going to go into too much detail about the Orange Order. It has a long history. It's difficult to explain. I'd maybe need another live stream just to explain the Orange Order. But the Orange Order are mainly a pro-unionist movement in Northern Ireland, and they are also in Scotland. A Protestant movement, so they don't accept Catholics into it, or as far as I know, they don't. It'd be somewhat against their ethos, but they, as far as I know, most of them, if not all of them, or the Orange Order itself, officially backed Brexit, because they were hoping that it would put a border on the island of Ireland, not one in the Irish Sea, so they lost that bet. Nick O'Bra, thanks so much for that super chat. Watch the Met Police be like, we can't continue the investigation without Sue Gray's report, creating a checkmate situation. It's like, yeah, Sue Gray can't complete a report without the police finishing their investigation, but the investigators will say, I'm sorry, we can't complete our investigation because we need Sue Gray's report. And Boris will be celebrating. Take that, Ramoners. Take that, ordinary citizens. Thanks so much for that, Nickelbrock. So it says here, more than 52,000 people have signed a petition against the Northern Ireland Protocol, the Grand Secretary of the Orange Order has said. Reverend Mervyn Gibson accepted that some could be double signatures or not genuine, as the petition was online. Oh. So you had a petition online and you got 52,000 people to sign it. Like, if it's online, obviously people from all over the world could be signing it. People who don't know what the Northern Ireland Protocol is. People who don't even know where Northern Ireland is. People who wouldn't be able to find Ireland on a map. They were probably signing it because they were sent it by, through Facebook or something like that. Anyway, the vast majority walked into the Orange Hall and signed their name, he said. Yes, but everything was above board, even though we can't prove that it was. Mr. Gibson was speaking to BBC Radio Ulster's Talkback programme on Tuesday. I'm not decrying anybody who did it online. It was I'm actually surprised the Orange Order have a website. Sorry, I have to steal someone's joke. They said they're the political wing of the Old Testament. No, that's the DUP, but the Orange Order and the DUP are very closely aligned. It was great to get the people online, but thousands upon thousands got up on a Saturday and went out deliberately to go to the hall and sign the petition. Thousands. That's how strongly they felt about the protocol, Mr. Gibson said. The Northern Ireland Protocol, part of the Brexit deal, which created the Irish sea border, resulting in checks and goods entering Northern Ireland from Great Britain. Mr. Gibson told the programme that if Michelle O'Neill is First Minister and the protocol is still in place following May's election, then the Democratic Unionist Party and other unionists should not enter the Assembly. Okay, so his problem is that let me get this straight, he wanted Brexit. He allowed Boris Johnson to do the negotiations for Brexit, and Theresa May and Boris Johnson, but principally Boris Johnson, because at the end it was Boris Johnson who agreed the withdrawal agreement, which contains the protocol. And his response is, okay, we agreed to something we didn't understand. We campaigned for something we didn't understand. We voted for something we didn't understand. And now we want it undone. And because we were so stupid, it's likely that Sinn Féin will become the biggest party in Northern Ireland, and therefore having the position handed to them of First Minister, because that's happening, because all of this stems from Brexit, okay? Something that they supported. Because if that happens, then we're going to encourage unionists not to support democracy, basically. Not enter the Assembly. They are obliged, as a democratic party, to enter the Assembly because they don't like the protocol. If the protocol leads us into an all-Ireland economy, which is the precursor to a United Ireland, he said. Sorry, it leads us to an... So the protocol, which is a consequence of Brexit, if there was no Brexit, there would be no protocol. The protocol leads us to an all-Ireland economy. I'm sorry, but you should have known what you were voting for. But it's not like this is something that happened without any foresight. This was predicted. But the response from the Unionists, the DUP, the response from the Orange Order was that no, Brexit will be good for Northern Ireland. I see the protocol as a bigger threat than the Provos were ever. The Provos being the Provisional IRA. It's something you voted for. You can't turn around and say, we don't like the protocol, but we like Brexit. Because none of these people are campaigning to rejoin the single market and the customs union. And I've said this before. The Orange Order, the DUP, the traditional unionist voice, hate. Their love for the union is less than their hate for the protocol, their hate for the European Union. Imagine that. If there was a balance, love for the union or hate for Europe. Well, hate for Europe is stronger than the union. Because if they truly loved the union, they would be saying, let's campaign, let's convince everyone that we need to rejoin the single market and the customs union. Now, of course, they have no power. A bit like, in Lord of the Rings, you have no power here, Gandalf the Grey. You have no power here in Westminster. You can go to Westminster and you can write petitions, you can complain, you can meet with Liz Truss, you can meet with Boris Johnson, but nothing's going to change because you have no power over them. You have nothing. You have no negotiation ability, no bargaining chips. You can stamp your feet as much as you want. Boris Johnson doesn't care. Look at, if you don't believe me, look at what's happening in Westminster. Look at what's happening in England. Really serious problems are being ignored by Boris Johnson because they benefit Boris Johnson. Things that could bring down Boris Johnson's government, he's ignoring it because it affects Boris Johnson. It means that he would have to inconvenience himself. He's not going to do this for you. He's not going to trigger Article 16 for you. At what stage do these people realise they are under a bus? And the sad thing about all of this as well is that the protocol is actually beneficial for Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's in a unique position where it has access to the single market and the UK internal market. And these people are saying, no, we need to get rid of it. And replace it with what? Tumbleweed. Nothing. They've not provided any viable alternative. They actually haven't provided any alternative. And look, the Orange Order visited Dublin today. It says here, where is it? Yes, he was speaking a day after meeting Taoiseach Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin. It was a frank discussion. He gave all of his time and he listened, he said. But it's like everywhere else. Everyone's listening, but there's no product yet. No product yet about the protocol. We didn't hold back, and we told him what we thought. The Irish government are not going to get rid of the protocol because the Orange Order wanted it. Remember, these are people who campaigned for Brexit. Okay, Ireland didn't want Brexit, but they have to suffer the consequences of Brexit. You wanted Brexit, and you don't want to suffer the consequences of Brexit. As I said before, Boris Johnson is not going to get rid of it because you want it gone. It doesn't work like that. You have no bargaining chip. You have nothing against, nothing to use against Boris Johnson. And what's sad as well is that, as I said, it's beneficial for Northern Ireland. And these people don't understand it. They don't care. They would actually prefer Northern Ireland to be poorer than to get rid of Brexit. It's sad. Anyway, let's move on. Furious farmers lash out. Let me read some of your comments before we continue. The extraordinary fanatical fervency of Brexit advocates like Kate Hoey is a perverse extreme contradiction to the lack of any understanding of the implications and consequences involved. I agree, Adrian. Yes, they didn't understand what they were voting for, but they were hoping it would do something. So they were hoping that it would put a border on the island of Ireland. But they were not able to read the room, and they didn't understand that a Conservative Party or a British government that agreed the Northern Ireland, the Belfast Agreement or the Good Friday Agreement wouldn't do that. I remember doing videos on this back in 2019, when we were coming up to the moment of the signing of the withdrawal agreement, and there was a small 1% of my thinking that could Boris Johnson or could the Conservatives really tear up the Good Friday Agreement? There was a possibility, but it was extremely remote. And I was thinking, they're not going to do that because it would damage them on the world stage. It's not just about damaging them in Northern Ireland. It would damage them on the world stage. And to what benefit? So the border had to go somewhere. So the border had to go in the Irish Sea. And you don't need to be an expert. Look at the two borders. One has a couple of ports on it. The other has hundreds of crossings. So if you're going to put a border somewhere, you'd put it in the Irish Sea. And when it came to Brexit and it came to defending the Union, Brexiteers always chose Brexit. And, they have outed themselves over that. I remember there was an interview on LBC where an English MP, an English Tory MP, when she was asked about the Northern Ireland Protocol, she said, my constituents don't know Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is hundreds of miles away. They voted for Brexit. They want their Brexit. That was enough for me. Perfect. That was the perfect answer. It perfectly demonstrated that Brexiteers care more about Brexit than they do about the Union. And because of their precious Brexit, they're destroying the Union. You can't be at this stage. I don't see how anyone can square this circle. How you can be a unionist and support Brexit at the same time. It's logically impossible. Because they're working against each other. Brexit is destroying the Union. If you support Brexit, you're pushing Scotland away. If you support Brexit, you're pushing Northern Ireland away. And anyone who claims to be a unionist, look, and I'm not talking about the Conservative and Unionist Party, they're just charlatans. But I'm talking about ordinary people. I'm talking about your councillor, your local councillor, or a celebrity, or anyone. If they claim to be a unionist and a Brexiteer, then there's something wrong with their brain. Okay, it doesn't work. It's like saying I'm a flat earther and a global. Well, I don't even know the other term. the default. Okay, a globalist. No, not globalist. That's not the right term. 300 border crossings, twice as many as the rest of the EU. Well said, Katrina. Yes. Where was it going to go? There or in the Irish Sea? Brexiteers are breaking the UK. They are. And it's their arrogance. It wasn't actually necessary. It could have... And I'm talking about the type of Brexit that Boris Johnson delivered. Because if the UK had stayed within the single market and the customs union, then it wouldn't have been necessary to break the union. The union would actually be stronger now. I've said before, a united Ireland is on the horizon, but Brexit brought that horizon much closer to where we are today. Now, some things may slow it down. Actually, the Northern Ireland Protocol may actually slow it down. And I think I'd like to do a video on that because it is a very interesting point of view how Brexit is bringing a Northern Ireland, United Ireland closer to fruition, while to reality. Sorry, I should say, is bringing closer to reality. While the protocol, the better the protocol works, the more people will want to keep it, and the United Ireland would potentially get rid of the protocol. Now, something could be introduced in the meanwhile, the protocol maintained in some way, some agreement between a United Ireland and Great Britain, or Wangland, or whatever's left, could be agreed to maintain the protocol. So, in a way, Northern Ireland would still have access to both the single market and the internal British internal market. I think it'd be difficult to work out, but it's not impossible. That in that way, Northern Ireland could still be a unique position. but I don't see that happening in a United Ireland. The protocol would be... The best way to get rid of the protocol would be a United Ireland. And the unionists don't seem to understand that either. I'm not criticising all unions here. My focus is mainly the Brexit supporting ones. The DUP, the TUV, and the Orange Order. Because there are pragmatic unionists in Northern Ireland. The UUP are much more pragmatic, much more moderate. They have their extremes as well. James, thanks so much for that super chat. Irish fishermen beating the Russian Navy. This is a lovely story. So I wasn't expecting to talk about it, but I just want to talk about it a little bit because it's a wonderful story. So for those of you who don't know, the Russian Navy, not the entire fleet, of course, but there were a number of military vessels in the Atlantic Ocean within the EEZ. I think it's the economic something zone. I don't remember. But it's not Irish territorial waters, but it's a type of agreed area where Irish fishermen are allowed to fish, but it's not within the territorial water. It's a bit complicated, but it's not that important. But there were Russian military vessels in that area, and they were doing exercises. And the Irish fishermen were not too happy about it. So they went out and they, in a sense, harassed the military vessels. So you can imagine these little tiny trawlers attempting to harass military vessels, okay, destroyers or cruisers, I'm not sure what they were. But, you know, the Russian Navy, okay. And the Irish government complained to the Russian embassy in Dublin on behalf of these fishermen. And the response from the Russian military was, oh, okay, I'm sorry about that, we'll move our fleet. Or we'll move these ships. And what I thought was very interesting about this was how quickly the Russian Navy did this. Now, the Russian Navy didn't have to do that. They could have just told them, get lost. You don't even have a navy yourself. But I thought they did it because they didn't see Ireland as a threat or as a potential threat. So I think, and I'm not criticizing the British here, not at all, you know, or if it was the French, it would have been the same. Let's leave Brexit out of this for a moment. Imagine if it was the French, okay, French waters, the Russian Navy are there, the French fishermen go there, harass them a bit, the French government make a request to the Russian Navy, please move your ships there, they shouldn't be in that position. Do you think the Russians would have responded in the same way to the French or the British or the Spanish in the same way as they did to the Irish? No, I don't think they would. I think they would have told the French to get lost. The reason they didn't do it to the Irish is because they didn't see them as a threat or as a potential threat, which is, you know, double-edged sword here. It's like, you know, the school bully sees someone else there. Well, I shouldn't really call the Russians a bully, but in a sense, they don't see Ireland as a threat, not even worth getting into trouble with. Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll move it. No problem. They were polite. I don't think it's about politeness. Just, yeah, there's no benefit in us opening a front out there. And of course, Ireland is not part of NATO, so I think that's also something that played into it. But it was an interesting situation where the Irish fishermen beat the Russian Navy. A bit more complicated than that, but it was a very nice story. Thanks for that, James. We also have a super chat from Anthony C. Great to see you, Anthony C. Hope you're well tonight. Navarra Media showed an old interview where Boris stated how he ruffled his hair and bumbling is designed to distract the Mugs and his enemies. Unfit Prime Minister. Yes, I saw that as well. I don't know if it was the Navarra one, but I did see the interview of him a few years ago where he said, what you do is you create chaos. You continually say, create gaffes and chaos. And what you do is you distract. So people are focusing on one gaffe or one mistake or one idiotic statement, and then you create another one. And then by the time they have actually absorbed the information, tried to process it, well, they've been bamboozled with another one. And then you bamboozle them with another one after that. And then you continually are able to get away with all sorts of things because people don't have the time to process the first one. Or they're trying to react to the first one, trying to call you out on the first one, but you've already created another one. And it's worked. It's worked since he was a journalist. It's worked since he was Mayor of London, when he was an MP, and now that he's Prime Minister. And he gets away with it. The party, was there a party? No, there wasn't a party. He apologized for the party, he apologized for the people laughing at the party, but there was no party. And they're constantly drip of allegations or images or things like that eventually you can't we can't process all that information. And the lies as well. You continually lie on a daily basis. Every time he's in the House of Commons, he lies about something. And I'm sorry, my ticker is out of date for some reason. I'll have to have a look at that. Continually lie, and then by the time you are trying to respond to the first lie or the second lie, he's on lie 55. Thanks for that super chat, Anthony C. Oh, we have another one, Sean McCarthy. Thanks so much. Hey, you. Thank you so much, Sean. Great to see you on tonight. Regan Ali, thank you so much for that. Russia ran away, and I don't blame them. They were afraid of the Irish fishing fleet. Yeah, but I don't think they ran away. But it's just like, it's not worth it. What's the point in getting into an argument with a neutral country? What are they going to do to us? They're going to send one of their... I think the Irish have maybe a frigate, or maybe a couple of frigates, but they're not a threat. I think somebody posted a picture online of how the Danish Navy have one destroyer that could destroy the entire Irish fleet without the Irish fleet actually knowing that the destroyer was in the vicinity. Yeah, so Ireland doesn't have a navy, okay? Ireland doesn't really have a defence force. But they're not interested in that. They're interested in peacekeeping. For example, they send a lot of soldiers to UN missions. And I think that's a good thing. But they're not interested in war. And I'm glad that they're not. Maybe in the long term it could be a good idea. Maybe in the long term it could be a bad idea. So let's move on. I want to show you... No, let me see. Speaking of Russia, I think we just want to talk a little bit about this, and then I'm not going to stick with it too much. Johnson says clear and present danger of imminent Russian campaign. So will Putin invade Ukraine? I don't know. He has a massive army on the border. There's every day we're saying it could be any moment, and we've been saying that for a week. But something concerning is that allegedly there has been movement of, for example, field hospitals are being set up. Spare blood has been transported to the front. That means that they are planning something. They're probably planning an invasion. But it says here, someone said we're exaggerating the threat that the US and the UK are trying to big this up. That's not the intelligence we're seeing. It's a clear and present danger. The Prime Minister added that the Russian preparations for an imminent military campaign. Johnson said Putin was holding a gun to Ukraine's head. Johnson recalled watching the Berlin Wall fall as a young man, a historical event. I don't believe Boris Johnson was watching that. The wall fall, he was probably, I don't know, doing something else. Historical event that he said meant any country was free to choose its security alliances. Putin is trying to undermine this to impose a new Yalta and zone of influence. Johnson said he warned the Kremlin's ambitions would continue. It wouldn't just be Ukraine. You have to think about Georgia and Moldova and other countries. I think what Putin has been trying to do over the last number of years, decades even, is to maintain or reinstate the Soviet Union. Something like that, a Russian Federation on the style of the Soviet Union. And there is a real feeling that, you know, countries like Ukraine, Moldova, many of the Eastern Bloc are they need to come back. And in some spheres, in some schools of thought, they never went away. The Soviet Union was never really dissolved, never properly dissolved, so it never actually collapsed in some people's minds. And that these countries were not really free, or are not really free. They're not independent sovereign states. And it's right for Russia to go there and push NATO out. So if you don't see Ukraine as a sovereign state, then it doesn't seem like a problem for you for the Russian army to enter and reinstate, to put in charge someone who's pro-Kremlin. HMS Defender docked in Ukraine was enough to monitor the whole airspace during the exercise. The Russians shot at it to no avail. They know even one D-35 class is very dangerous. Johnson thinks he's Churchill. He wants the war up and running. I really hope not. He was too busy with bananas. Exactly. He was writing, writing reports on bendy bananas. Putin's not interested in invasion. He's interested in influence and soft power. Boris Johnson and Biden are very weak, and the rest of the EU have no unified voice. I agree with that, but I think NATO has been quite strong in its response. And I think you could be right here that he's not really he's about showing what he can do, but not actually taking the step to do it. Because think about it, it makes more sense for him to just frighten countries into agreement, into submission. Frighten, don't use the military, just undermine their democracies and try and put people who are friendly to him in positions of power. It makes more sense. Like he would achieve more by just pumping money into pro-Russian parties in these countries. Give them lots of money, give them the tools they need, like Brexit, like Cambridge Analytica. Give them those tools, and those democracies will return pro-Russian parties, and those pro-Russian parties will agree to whatever Putin has to say. And you don't need a military. Military invasions is very 20th century. We don't do those things anymore. But I think his fear is that these countries are going to create alliances with NATO or become members of NATO, and then he's lost everything, because NATO membership, in a sense, protects these countries from more and more Russian influence, because NATO isn't just military. NATO is also intelligence. NATO is also dealing in cyber warfare, and that's what Putin doesn't want. As soon as NATO has planted a flag in that country, it's more or less lost to Putin. But I'm not an expert, so I'm just going from what I know. Russian for Russian-speaking people is just Lieberstein by another name. I don't like to use the parallels of the 1930s, because we are looking at something quite different today. but there is it is strange how Russian speaking generally means pro Putin. Not everyone, of course, is pro Putin in Russia, but in some of these states, many of the people who are Russian speaking would be happy to have Putin in charge. That's very worrying, because you should care more about your own country than the fact that you speak the same language as the guy who wants to invade or replace your current government with somebody who's Russian friendly. Anyway, let's move on, guys. No, I also just want to cover this story, which is very concerning for me. European-based story here. Italians League's Matteo Salvini calls for new alliance based on US Republicans. So the Italian League leader, Matteo Salvini, has proposed creating a right-wing political force styled on the Americans' Republican Party in a move that threatens to spell the end of the tense partnership with his far-right sometimes rival, Giorgia Meloni. Salvini's League and other parties, including the the centre-left Democratic Party and populist Five Star Movement that make up Italy's broad ruling coalition, have been left in disarray after failing to agree on a mutually accepted candidate for the head of state in last week's presidential election, culminating in Sergio Mattarella, 80, who's 80 years old, being elected for a second term against his earlier expressed wishes. Because the leader, the president, is selected by the parliament. His call was made in Il Giornale, the Silvio Berlusconi-owned newspaper, like Murdoch, as he scrambled for survival under pressure from those within his own ranks over the presidential election debacle. He wrote that the right-wing parties that support Mario Draghi's government would create a force modelled on that of the American Republican Party and would reportedly meet Berlusconi, the fourth Italian leader, to discuss the proposals. Salvini's ultimate endorsement of Mattarella for president infuriated Meloni, the leader of Brothers of Italy, which allies with the League and Forza Italia in elections, but unlike them, stayed out of Draghi's government. She accused them of betrayal and for the behind-the-scenes dealings with their coalition partners. Meloni is he's a representative of the Brothers of Italy party, which is basically a fascist party. Okay, they speak very well of the fascism of the 1930s and 40s. So I don't like the idea that Salvini would be trying to form some sort of Republican party. But yes, he needs to bring different factions together. If he does, he'd create one party, one massive party. And what's common is, and it could succeed, because what you find on the right is they care more about power than anything else. It's all about power. Like the Conservatives. The Conservatives, there's very few splits taking place within the Conservative Party. For the Conservatives in Britain, it's about power. We want to run the country. Make some money on the side, of course, but the objective is we don't argue within the party. We don't criticize the Prime Minister. Some people will, but generally there is a massive amount of unity within the party. Not on the left. No, we're always fighting amongst ourselves, and that's why it's very difficult to unite the left, because everyone's a splitter. The People's Front of Judea, the Judean People's Front. But on the right, they don't have this problem. Their goal is power. And I think there's a real risk that someone like Salvini could form a right-wing party, like the Republicans, as he's saying, in the United States, where you focus on we want to win elections. And watch this space. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. The party political version of democracy is the inherently weak. The nation is divided. Yes, I agree. And it's democracy makes for bad government. That's unfortunately the cost, but I prefer democracy than a government that I prefer a government. Look at countries like Belgium, for example. They don't have very strong governments. The government normally is coalitions or minority governments, but the country functions and functions quite well. So I prefer something like that than to have a dictatorship, basically. Thanks so much for that. Valerio, thank you so much for that. Valerio knows a lot more about this than I do. Salvini is like Boris, where whatever he does is wrong and bound to fail very badly. Republicans are looking for the death kiss, trust me. I think so. I hope so. I truly do. Republicans in the United States, I don't know what they've been doing recently, but it's they're going further and further off the deep end. They want Trump back in power, and I think that's really, really weird. Okay, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to cover another couple of things. Keir Starmer.
Ridiculous.
So, as you probably know, Keir Starmer was challenging Boris Johnson, doing a very good job in the House of Commons on Monday. And unfortunately, Boris Johnson understands that he can use Parliament, he can abuse Parliament, and he can not suffer the consequences of that. Now, Boris Johnson will say things in Parliament that he would never say in public because he knows he has parliamentary privilege. That protects him from saying horrible things. It protects him to say horrible things. And one of those was yesterday when he said that Keir Starmer was more interested in attacking journalists. You know, Boris Johnson, okay? Boris Johnson, who allegedly, I don't know how allegedly it is, but I better just say allegedly, worked with somebody to have a journalist beaten up. Allegedly. But he says that Keir Starmer, in the House of Commons, he said that Keir Starmer was more interested in fighting journalists than making sure that Jimmy Savile was put behind bars.
It is a ridiculous slur peddled by right-wing trolls. And the disgust, and this is where I saw the faces of the Conservative MPs, the disgust on their faces that their Prime Minister was debasing himself by sinking so low in the chamber was clear. You know, they knew that he was going so low with that slur, with that lie. He'd been advised not to do it because it's obviously not true, but he does it because he doesn't understand what honesty and integrity means. When I was Director of Public Prosecutions, I was superintended by the Attorney General, a Conservative Attorney General. So it is as ridiculous as it gets. And I'm glad that those Tories MPs were disgusted, and many of them expressed that to me, disgusted at their Prime Minister for debasing himself in the House of Commons, instead of acting with the contrition and the integrity that he should have shown yesterday. He does what he always does, which is to try to drag everybody into the gutter with him. And the one thing we know about this Prime Minister is everybody who's ever come into contact with him always gets damaged in the process.
Now, there are two ways he could have answered this. He could have said, look, I'm going to explain what the situation was. But he didn't. Now, I was going to criticize him for doing that. But I think Monkeytron actually said something very, very astute in the comments. It's about traction with the public. So, yes, stop talking about it and move on. Because if you try to explain, then people will say, oh, well then, what was your relationship with Jimmy Savile? Or how much did you know Jimmy Savile? Or did you ever meet Jimmy Savile? And things like this. And then this creates a lot of problems. This creates a situation where you have to fight back. So I think I would have preferred that he had explained, because I think it deserves an explanation. He did nothing wrong here. It was actually followed by the local police and a local lawyer, I think it was. But it was something that was taken out of his hands, so he was not responsible for it. And he actually called for an investigation into it after. So it's not like he did something wrong and he was trying to cover it up. He actually wanted the truth to be exposed. But it doesn't help talking about it because you give it oxygen. And I think this is the correct... Once again, I would prefer he did, because I believe in honesty, and I believe that, I hope that the majority of people will take a step back and go, okay, what's the problem here? Okay, you've explained it. Thank you very much. Now I can move on. But that's not how politics works. It's about a match. It's about a boxing match, and you use whatever you can against the other side. And Boris Johnson, desperate, sunk to this level. And Keir Starmer is right just to say, look, this is disgusting, and not go into detail. So yeah, I agree that, as I said, I prefer he explained it, because I think reasonable people would have understood. But we're not dealing with reasonable people. The Daily Mail, the Express, the Telegraph, people online, these are not reasonable people. Brexiteers, they're not reasonable people. They will use whatever they can to drag Starmer down into the gutter, and they were hoping that this would expand. It would explode into something, and instead of Boris Johnson scraping the bottom of the barrel, you would have Keir Starmer defending himself and going into detail, which is it's not helpful for him, and it's also someone who's some people who are forgotten here are the victims. It's not helpful for them. They have tried to move on. The last thing they need is Boris Johnson and the leader of the opposition fighting over this issue. Boris Johnson should not have brought it up in the first place. It was disgusting. But then that's Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson does not give a crap about anyone but himself. Disgusting. He used it because he thought he'd be able to score some points on it. In the same way, look, I don't believe for a second that Boris Johnson gives a crap about the people who have died. Not one bit. When he says he felt sorry, or when he came out, look, I honestly believe that when he came out of hospital, some people don't believe that he had it, but I believe that he did. But when he came out of hospital, that he would have a road to Damascus conversion, and he would say, now I'm going to focus on protecting the NHS. I'm going to focus on the staff. They saved my life. The least I can do is fight in their corner for them. Fight their corner for them. And he didn't. He threw them right under a bus. So guys, just one thing I wanted to cover before we finish. I think it's important, and then we'll have our one for the road.
Let's start with those COVID.
So, the cost of living crisis. I wanted to show you how this Tory MP responded.
The rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. This is a tax guarantee that will protect the incomes of hard-working families across the next Parliament.
Yeah, and look, I'm a low-tax Conservative. I think everyone who stood on that manifesto was proud of the fact that we committed not to raise taxes, but no one could have reckoned with the impact of what we've seen over the last 2 years. It's been an extraordinary event. We spent over £400 billion responding to coronavirus, and obviously that's allowed us to both keep the health service running, but also to introduce...
And what about all this money that was given to Europe? What, £350 million a week? Couldn't that have been used? No?
Things like the furlough scheme, which have saved literally millions of jobs. It's in that context that we've incurred these huge debts. It's in that context as well that we've accumulated these NHS backlogs, and we have to be honest with people. We can either pay for more treatments by whacking up borrowing, which is just taxes deferred for the next generation, or we can deal with it responsibly now.
I
actually believe that borrowing is not a bad thing if it's actually for the people. But this is not about... But the money borrowed is not for the people. It's not for the NHS. £37 billion was handed over to Dido Harding. 37 billion. It's like a third of the NHS budget. I was just reading some of the comments there. Like, this is a tax on the working class, on the lower paid, because as we know, national insurance contributions, the hike in national insurance contributions is going to negatively impact those at the lower end of the scale. Not this guy here. He's not going to be negatively affected, a little bit, but as we know, or if you don't know, national insurance contributions stop at a certain threshold. They go up to a certain level and then they stop there. So it's not like income tax where the more you earn, the more you pay. No, they didn't touch income tax because they didn't want to sell it as a tax, because that would piss off many of their voters. So they sold it as a national insurance contribution, or increasing the national insurance contribution. The Labour Party should call this what it is, a Brexit tax. That's what they like the poll tax and other taxes that were damaging to the Conservative Party politically. The Labour Party should be calling this a Brexit tax, because that's what it is. They said, we're going to take the money from Brexit. Like because of Brexit, we're going to have all this money. We're going to be swimming in money. Well, now you're not swimming in money. You have to raise taxes. Then I would call this the Brexit tax. It doesn't mean leaving the European Union or rejoining the European. Nothing to do with that. This is a Brexit tax. And you're hitting the party. If you use this type of language, you're hitting the party with the left and the right, because you're talking about them raising taxes, which is toxic within the Conservative Party. And then you're associated with Brexit, which is meant to be some sort of success. So for Tory voters, Brexit is supposed to be a success, and tax is always going down. So if they're being told, wait a minute, taxes are rising because of Brexit? What?
Thought, why don't we do this instead? Why don't we use that 350 million quid a week that we were promised, that would amount to 18.2 billion pounds a year for our National Health Service, which we heard so much about during Brexit, which is 6.2 billion pounds more than what the National Insurance rise will get. I'm not sure if we've got a picture of the boss, just to make the point.
Well, I mean, as someone who's supported Brexit, I'm delighted that we're no longer sending that money to Brussels. But
I've already covered this video, but for some people who may have not seen it, I'm glad we're not sending that money. So we have this 18.2 billion.
But we were told that it was going to be used.
And indeed, if you remember, Theresa May in 2018 specifically did repurpose.
It's on the side of the boss.
Yeah, and that money is now in the NHS. This is the.
No, it's not. It's not, because it's 18.2 billion. Last year, 2020, 2021, the NHS received 3.2 billion, not 18.2.
Point. Theresa May unleashed a record funding settlement.
Miscalculated.
No, no, because we've got more of a backlog in the NHS than anyone knew. But
I wish, this is what frustrates me sometimes about these journalists. I'd say, did the NHS get 18.2 billion? He'd have to say yes or no, and I would keep labouring that point. Sorry, it's 18.2 billion. Is that correct? Yes, Simon, tell me if that's correct. 18.2 billion, correct or no? He'd have to say yes or no. 350 million by 52 is 18.2 billion. Is that correct? And I wouldn't let him move forward until he had actually confirmed yes. Okay, so how much did the NHS receive last year? Was it 18.2 billion? If it's not, then why not? And if they didn't, then why didn't they receive that? And then why are you expecting people who you told to vote for Brexit now expected to cough up the money that Brexit was supposed to deliver?
For the 70th anniversary of the NHS
so
back in 2018,
that money went to the NHS.
We gave a record
penny.
We gave
that you promised on the side of that boss.
We gave a funding settlement to the NHS which was actually larger than that sum, and that was.
And then she says, "Okay, no, that's a frigging lie. It was not 18.2 billion. It was not more than 18.2 billion. It was less. It was about 3.5 billion or 3 billion. It was not 18.2. Like, yeah, okay, and then he moves on, and then he's let off the hook, because what happens is the public see this, and he said, yeah, we gave more. So then the public think that he's telling the truth when he's telling a lie.
Theresa May's announcement back in 2018.
OK, so the people that are facing a 10% increase in their national insurance contributions, someone earning £30,000 will now pay £270 more a year, given that the cost of living is increasing, given that the heating their homes is just going to be almost impossible for so many people, going up perhaps £1,000. Where are they going to find the money from?
Well, the cost of living is a major issue. It's important, though, to be clear about what the health and social care levy will cost. The 6 million lowest earners won't pay anything extra, and the top 15% of earners will pay almost half the cost of the policy. So it's a very progressive policy.
But how does that fix people? How does that fix the problem people are facing today, who have to decide whether they're going to heat their homes or feed their families? Like, his response is, yes, but you won't be impacted by this tax hike. Which I don't believe him, because he's already lied. So how can we believe this guy? But he says you won't be impacted. Okay, but how is that going to affect people who are suffering from the impact of inflation, for example, or rising energy prices?
For your average taxpayer, this is a question of literally £3 or £4 more per week. In the context of bearing down on this huge backlog, as I say, of accumulated.
But we're not talking about income tax. We're talking about national insurance contributions.
Waiting list. We have to make sure that we can fund that sustainably.
So
as I say, the only alternative.
Every single penny will go to the National Health Service and social care.
It will. Yes. This is an entirely dedicated tax for those purposes.
I don't believe. Does anyone honestly believe this crap anymore? Yeah, we're going to raise all this extra tax. We're not going to spend it on bridges to nowhere. We're not going to spend it on propaganda. We're not going to spend it on flights for Liz Truss to Australia. No, we're actually going to spend it on social care. Really. Believe us this time. I know we lied before. I know we've been lying since 2016 and even before that. But this time people were telling the truth. The cost of living will hit the Tories in votes. Regan Ali, thanks so much for that super chat. I really hope so. Because at this stage, people have been lied to. They turned around and voted the Conservative Party back in 2019. I hope, like, people who have turned around and said, I'm not voting for the Conservative Party anymore, that's wonderful. But there are still people who will say, Boris is doing the best he can. He's doing his best. Like a 5-year-old at school. He's struggling, but he's doing his best. He has a lot on his plate. You know, all these holidays, all of these parties, all of this work. Thanks for that super chat, Regan Elite. People have to turn around and say, no more. And I think there's a real opportunity for the Labour Party here to go to these red wall seats and say, the Tories are putting up your taxes. They lied to you. They said that Brexit would fix all these things. Let's not talk about Brexit, but you're going to pay for it. They've handed over billions, 37 billion to Dido Harding. And now they're saying that you have to cough up a bit more because they messed up. I think it was £9 billion spent on PPE that was not fit for purpose. That's money down the drain. That has to come out of somewhere else. Oh, look, we're going to have to cut care in your community. We're going to have to cut public services because we've messed up. But it's okay if we mess up because the public will vote us back in the next time. Max, you're wrong about national insurance. It doesn't stop at any level, but it starts at about 9.5 thousand instead of 12.5. And 2, it only affects working people, not for example, dividends or property income. Yeah, so it's not a tax on income; it's a tax on wages. So yes, thanks for that, David. if you are, if your income is on, for example, property or dividends or shares or investments, you don't pay national insurance contributions on that. You only pay it on wages. And what happens is you have a lot of very rich people paying themselves a very low wage. So they have a lot of money from investments and stuff like that. They set up a company and they pay themselves a wage. But that wage is maybe £10,000 a year, meaning that they probably don't actually have to pay any national insurance contributions. But they're filthy rich. This is another one of these loopholes. And this is the thing about these loopholes. If you're rich, you can buy very expensive accountants that look like this guy, and they will help you get around these problems. If you're poor, if you're just a general worker, you can't afford these people, and you're sort of stuck. You're stuck on the wheel, the hamster wheel. You can't get off it. You don't have the financial resources to get around these problems. You have to pay your taxes, and that's it. And you can't complain about it. But if you're wealthy, you can afford to buy the experts to help you get around these problems. Alexander, thanks so much for that super chat. To be fair, Boris has a lot on his plate. Prosecco, cheese, and biscuits and gravy. Wonderful. That's true. He has a lot on his plate, the poor guy. And he does a lot of exercise, but I don't see him losing much weight. Like myself. But I don't do any exercise. I'm just not losing any weight. So guys, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks for everyone who smashed the like button. Thanks for all of the super chats. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for all of that. Before we finish, of course, we have our one for the road. I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm sure you will. Once again, also massive thank you to all of the moderators for doing a wonderful job. So before we finish, we have our comedy moment. Hope you enjoy it.
The full Sue Gray report, brackets update, brackets first chapter, brackets introduction, brackets to be continued, has been published and placed in the House of Commons library. Not my copy, obviously, that was heavily annotated, mostly with swear words. I want to say I'm sorry. This pandemic has been hard on everyone. I mean, I had some cracking hangovers. I understand the anger that people feel. I mean, I'm pretty angry myself, mostly about the price of wallpaper, but still. It's not enough to say sorry. We must look at ourselves in the mirror and learn. And as you can tell, I don't often look at myself in the mirror or learn anything. I will accept the recommendations and act. Now I'm acting sad. Oh, now I'm acting angry. Now I'm acting like I care about anybody else. I have full confidence in the police, especially my good friend Cressida. I mean, that's one dick I'm never getting out. Things have got so bad in 10 Downing Street that I need to be rewarded with a new office of the Prime Minister, an office that will have to be redecorated at the earliest opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I know it's important to restore the dignity of Number 10. I get it, and I will fix it. Just like Jimmy Savile, who the leader of the opposition failed to prosecute, even though that wasn't his decision. You see, dignity. I know what the issue is. It's whether this government can be trusted to deliver. Should see your faces. You thought I was going to say, like, follow the rules, didn't you? Psych. Now I'm going to do one of my pivots. Brexit, free ports, crimes, not the ones I did. Imaginary hospitals, growth, Russia, Brexit, Jeremy Corbyn, Jimmy Savile. No, I don't know. Vaccines, Brexit, Russia, Brexit. Not breaching COVID regulations wasn't a commitment in our 2019 manifesto, so with the greatest of possible respect, who gives the toss? I thank the Honourable Lady for her question, but she'll just have to wait. Not something I often say to a lady. And they're not usually honourable. Look, I've said we have to wait for the results of the police investigation, then I will decide what gets published from the rest of the report. I'll do a simple find and replace with Prime Minister for totally innocent great guy, and then we're set. It's funny, isn't it, Mr. Speaker? I can mislead the House deliberately, but they have to say I'm doing it inadvertently, otherwise you'll kick them out. Go on, say inadvertent again. Oh, I love it when you speak in that angry northern voice. It's like they're being told off by the Red Wall. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to fly to Ukraine so I can get Putin done.
Wonderful. Matt is wonderful. So I think this is probably one of his best yet. So guys, thanks for coming on. See you on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. And remember, be careful out there. You could get ambushed by a cake. Take care. Good night.